Let's read a short story. It's named The Secret of Culture by Munshi Premchand. I have sourced this short story from a book named Immortal Stories, edited by Ruskin Bond. About the author, Munshi Premchand was born in 1880 in Banaras. His real name was Nawab Rai or Dhanpat Rai. Premchand was greatly influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. He gave up his job to support Mahatma Gandhi's call for non-cooperation with the British Raj. This led him to take to writing as a full-time job. Premchand earned the reputation of being one of India's best writers of Urdu novels and short stories. He was forced to write under the pen name of Premchand as his book Soze Watan was banned by the ruling British government. His writing aimed at infusing his readers with the spirit of patriotism and nationalism. Premchand travelled extensively through small villages and towns. This gave him a clear perspective on the lives and struggles of the ordinary Indian. And his stories, novels, and essays are a sensitive reflection of these. Premchand's writing is characterized by its simplicity of style. He wrote in the language of the common man, and this is perhaps the reason why his language is a blend of Urdu and Hindi. He was a master of satire and humor. Some of his famous stories include Zevar Ka Dibba, Gilli Danda, Eidgah, and Namak Ka Daroga. About the story. Let's read about the story at the end. Okay. So it's the secret of culture. There are many things in life which I do not understand. Why do men shave? Why do educated people invariably always become short-sighted? Is it merely a weakness in the brain, or are there other reasons for it? And why do people run after titles? But at present I am not concerned with any of these things. I am faced with a new problem. What are the signs of culture in a man? Who is cultured and whom shall we call uncouth? At a casual glance, the question appears to be simple. Simple enough, perhaps, even for a child to answer. But going deeply into it, it does not remain as easy. Would, for instance, wearing of a jacket and trousers, hat, collar and necktie, eating at a table, drinking tea or coffee the whole day, smoking cigars, be considered the signs of culture? If that were, someone would have to call cultured even the drunken soldiers one comes across going almost zigzag on the roads, ready to tease the passers-by for no rhyme or reason. Surely they cannot be called cultured. Well then, culture must be something different, something which has more to do with the mind than with the outward appearance. Rai Ratan Kishore is one of my many friends, a highly educated man holding an important office. He is considered to be both kind-hearted and generous. Even in spite of a large salary, his expenses are always more than his income. Nearly one-fourth goes off as rent of the bungalow alone, and there are other expenses. The man is often worried. Bribes he does not take, not at least to my knowledge, although some say that he does. Only the travelling expenses are cooked up now and again. Sometimes the amount has to be made up even from other budget heads. When he is asked why he tours so much, the answer is simple. The work of the district is such that it requires the constant personal attention of the office. He has a way of fudging expenses. His camps are nearly always about 50 miles from the town. The staff remains at the camp and Rai Sahib sits at home and gossips. But who dare suspect his honesty? There is not even the slightest doubt about his being cultured. One day, when I went to call on him, he was scolding his Mali Damri. Damri is a day and night servant, allowed to get home only to take his food. His home is in a nearby village. Yesterday, for some reason, he did not return at night. Rai Sahib, when you are on day and night duty, why you stay at home last night? Why did you stay at home last night? I shall have to deduct your salary for yesterday. Damri, Sarkar, I had an unexpected guest and could not return. Rai Sahab, well, in that case, the guest will have to pay you the salary. Damri, oh, kind sir, I shall never do it again. Rai Sahab, stop your jabber. Damri, sir. Rai Sahab, all right, this time I shall let you off with a fine of 2 rupees. Damri, poor man, had come to apologize for staying away, and this was his award, a fine of 2 rupees. A fine of 2 rupees for absenting himself for one night. And nobody bothers about people who earn travelling allowances sitting at home. No one to punish such offenders. Damri also, had he been clever, would have returned to his quarters in the early hours of the morning, and nobody would have been any the wiser where he spent the night. But the man lacked cleverness. Damri had 6 biswas of land, but there were as many mouths to feed. His 2 sons, 2 daughters, and the wife all worked on the land, and yet there was not enough to eat at the day's end. After all, it was only 6 biswas of land. One couldn't expect to dig gold out of it. If they all went out of the village and worked as coolies, they would probably have been able to earn more. But how can a farmer bear the insult of being called a coolie? The major part of Damri's pay was spent in feeding the bullocks alone. But all this was preferable to being called a coolie. Undoubtedly, Damri worked as a coolie, but with 2 bullocks in front of his house, he was still a farmer. One day, Rai Sahib found him shivering. Why don't you get some clothes made, Damri? He asked. Damri, I can hardly provide a square meal for the family, Sarkar. Rai Sahib, why don't you sell off the bullocks? Haven't I told you this a number of times? After all, why can't you understand even such an elementary thing? Damri, sell off the bullocks, sir? How will I be able to show my face again in the village? Who will marry my daughters? Rai Sahab, oh, you fools. With such absurd ideas, is it no wonder that you people are so downtrodden? It is a crime to even take pity on you. Then turning towards me, well, Munshi ji, do you know of any remedy for such madness? The man is dying of cold, and yet he must have 2 bullocks. I replied, it is one's own outlook really. Rai Sahab, outlook? It is madness, I tell you. Look at me. Every year for generations, Janamashtami used to be celebrated in our household with great pomp and splendor. Hundreds of rupees were spent. There were feasts, presents for relations, clothes for the poor. The year my father died, I put a stop to it all. People said that I had become an atheist. Some even said that I had turned a Christian. But who cares? It all died down eventually. Fancy the absurd situation. If there was a marriage in the town, I must provide the wood. So the tradition since generation. So was the tradition since generations. My father even used to buy wood to carry on the tradition. Sheer absurdity. I have put a stop to it all. Naturally, there was a lot of hue and cry, but after all, I have to look to my pocket. I have saved nearly 500 rupees a year. The question again arose in my mind. Which of the two is cultured? The so-called stupid Damri, who is ready to sacrifice his life on the altar of family pride and tradition, or the rich Rai Ratan Kishore, who sacrifices family traditions for the sake of few pieces of silver? A very important case came up before Rai Sahab one day. A rich man of the town had been arrested for murder, and his friends were trying all means to get him out on bail. Petitions were sent to Rai Sahib, even recommendations in presence of fruits and flowers. Nothing, however, was of any avail, and nobody dared broach the subject of a bribe. In sheer desperation, at last, the rich man's wife decided to go to the Rai Sahib's wife. It was about 10 o'clock at night. The two women were talking. At last, an agreement was reached at 20,000 rupees. Rai Sahib's wife could not believe her ears. Going in, she told Rai Sahib, without much ado, that if he did not accept the money, she would. Rai Sahib, don't be impatient. What will she think of you? Have you no regard for your self respect? I agree that it is a large sum and can solve a number of our problems, but after all, it is also a question of the prestige of the district judge. You should have at least feigned offense and asked her to get out. Wife, whom are you advising? Haven't I done that already? Nearly turned her out of the house, but the poor woman put her head on my feet and started crying. Rai Sahib, did you say that even if you so much as mentioned the word bribe to me, I would eat you up? Wife, I have told her so many of these things, but she just won't budge. The poor woman is crying her heart out. Rai Sahib, you haven't agreed to accept the money, have you? Wife, agreed? I have even put it in the box. They are all banknotes. Rai Sahib, oh, you are a fool. I do wish somebody would drill some sense into your head. Wife, too late for it now. Rai Sahib, yes, so it seems. You didn't even ask me before putting the money in the box. If somebody should come to know of it, I would be undone. Wife, well, if that's the case, please think it over. I can still return it. Rai Sahib, oh, it's all over and done with now. I shall have to accept the man's bail application. A very dangerous proposition, but still. And you know how I hate taking bribes? Yet you must get impatient. I must break my vow on account of your stupidity. Wife, in that case, I shall go and return the money. Rai Sahib, don't be more stupid now. As this drama was being enacted in Rai Sahib's house, Damri was busy cutting the crop in his village headman's field. He had taken the night leave from Rai Sahib. When he reached home that evening, he found that the bullocks had nothing to eat. They were still some days before he would get his pay, and there was not even a pie in the house. As soon as the bullocks saw him, they started wagging their tails and making mute little sounds of welcome. The long lost master had returned at last, and with him had returned their hopes of food. As he went near them, they looked at him with pitiable, dreamy eyes and started licking his hands. Even a heart of stone would melt at such supplication. Poor Damri was at war with himself. Poverty started gnawing at his sides. With a heavy heart and with tears almost bubbling out of his eyes, he moved away into the hut. The matter must wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow he would try and arrange a loan. About 11 o'clock at night, Damri woke up with a start and found that the bullocks were still looking longingly at him. He could bear the sight no longer. How could he let these poor beasts starve? They who were as dear to him as his own sons. Taking out a sickle and a bag, he started off to look for fodder. Just outside the village were some fields of jawar and bajra. Seeing them, he started trembling. No, he would not be a thief. He must not steal. He would never stoop so low. But the bullocks are starving, somebody seemed to whisper. The struggle instantly ceased. The bullocks won. He must cut just enough to last them the night. Even if someone caught him, he would say that his bullocks were starving. Surely, none will punish him for a little fodder, and the most he could demand the price. After all, he was not stealing it for selling. As he was moving out of the field, the village policeman passed that way. He was on his way to the local banya shop to raid a gambling den. Seeing a man come out of a field with a bag at that hour of the night, he challenged Damri. Damri was almost dumbfounded. His worst fears had come true. Fumbling for words, he managed to utter, Sarkar, I have cut only a little. You can see for yourself. My bullocks are starving. Policeman. Stealing, huh? Whose field is this? Damri. Baldev Mehtu. Policeman. Come along with me, you thief. The policeman thought that perhaps now he would be able to add a little more to what he would get from the banya for letting him off. But what had poor Damri to give him? Ultimately, he was taken to the police station. A case of theft was registered against him, and he was to be produced before Rai Sahib the next day. When Rai Sahib saw Damri in the dock, he burst out with anger. Oh, you rascal, you have brought shame on me. People will say that Rai Sahib's servants are all thieves. What have you lost? You will get 6 months and live at government expense. Had you not been my servant, I might have been lenient with you, but now I must give you exemplary punishment. I don't want to hear that Rai Sahab was partial to his servant. And saying this, he sentenced Damri to 6 months rigorous imprisonment. The same day, the bail application came up and was granted. I heard both the stories and was convinced more than ever that culture was merely a second name for cunning. One can do the worst misdeeds, but so long as one can hide them, cover them up well, one is a man of culture, a gentleman. It's a very, very beautiful story. Now let's just read this about the story. Munshi Premchand brings to light social hypocrisy. The portrait of the poor common man caught in the vicious circle of poverty is sketched beautifully through the character of Damri. The so-called cultured Rai Ratan Kishore goes scot-free even after accepting bribe, while Damri gets 6 months rigorous imprisonment for stealing a little fodder for his starved buffaloes. Unfortunately, still the reality of our world. The Secret of Culture by Munshi Premchand.